Good morning, all, and thank you for joining us today. Welcome to the session AWS Direct Connect, Bridge Cloud and On-Premise, hosted by Cloud.in. I'm Suvarna Jadhav, working with Cloud.in as a strategic partnership and alliance manager. For today's session, we have Sanket and Rutuja as a speaker. Both are working with Cloud.in as a cloud consultant. As a part of solution architect team, both have expertise in delivering solutions by employing AWS best practices, leveraging the wide range of available AWS services. In this session, we will delve into the capabilities and benefits of AWS Direct Connect for your hybrid cloud environment. Our expert speakers will guide you through the key features and advantages of AWS Direct Connect, demonstrating how it can help your organization achieve a more efficient, secure, and cost-effective IT infrastructure. Whether you are a cloud architect, IT manager, or network administrator, this session is designed to provide valuable insights and practical knowledge. Before starting the session, I would like to mention a few points. All attendees are muted by default and cannot be unmuted during a session. We will have a question and answer session at the end of the presentation. If in case you have any questions in between the session, please raise your hand to grab speaker's attention, or you can type your question in the question section. I will request Sanket to start the session. Over to you, Sanket.
Thank you, ma'am. Hi all, good morning. First of all, thank you for joining this session of the AWS Direct Connect. I really appreciate your time for joining this session over the weekend. I hope you will have a good insights of related to AWS Direct Connect and whatever we are going to share about the related to data Direct Connect kind of a services. How can you leverage this service into your infrastructure if you're not leveraging, and so on. We'll just move ahead. So I will just give you a small intro about the who we are, basically the Cloud.in organization, how it's. So basically we are a kind of a hosting services, which we are also tied up with the kind of a multiple kind of a clouds. So we have been managing the AWS partner with for the last 7 years, and also we have been done means the overall company was lastly the providing the hosting provided. So it has been completed at 25 years. And coming to our customers and all that kind of things, as you can see the numbers mentioned. So there are kind of a 200 plus kind of a cloud projects we do handle. It is a kind of in a multiple sectors, the financial sector, the FNG, and all the media sector also. We do have the tied up with that cloud project as well as. Also coming to our expertise in that stuff, we do have multiple kind of a service deliveries as well as the competency, where we do showcase our expertise in the particular services, whether it is any kind of a firewall service, any kind of a CloudFront service. So we do serve kind of thing. And coming to a managed services kind of part, we do have a 24/7 knock and SOC team, which serves the client from end to end, which related to any kind of a cloud tickets and related to any kind of a cloud infrastructure they are holding with us. We do provide them a kind of a best resolution, whatever we are having a kind of incident response, whatever we do follow the RESI matrix for them. So that has been completed and we have been provided by end to end. So it has been managing in a day-to-day kind of thing, you can say. So these are the kind of our partners basically we are tied up with. As you can see, the cloud platform, basically the three main public clouds are there: the AWS, GCP, and the Azure one. And coming from a security point of view, for the kind of a firewall and all the VAPT kind of a purposes, we do have a Checkpoint Software Technologies, Fortinet, and F5 tied up with. And now coming to the kind of a data resilience and data security, we do have connect with the Druva VMware related to, and any kind of a dashboard related part, we do have a New Relic and a Confluent with tied up with. So this is a kind of overall partnership we are tied up with this multiple vendors, and we do have that expertise in every kind of a platform, whether it is a cloud, security, or the data management kind of thing. And as I mentioned previously, so basically we have been serving for this multiple industry verticals. So media and entertainment, e-com, IT, whether it's the public sector or private sector, the automobile. So in every sector we have been means we have been making our hands dirty on it. So getting the AWS infrastructures, re-architected them, whether it is a security requirement, whether it is a data management, whether it is a hosting or application or website. So in every terms we have been serving them with every resolution. We have been also tied up with in kind of a multiple sectors where we do have the migration kind of a project as well as from on-prem to AWS, from cloud to cloud. So we have been handling that stuff also. So there have been, means we have been delved into many kind of industry verticals where we serve our expertise in every kind of AWS services and so on. So now let's understand the agenda for the today's AWS Direct Connect webinar. So we'll just firstly understand the importance of the cloud connectivity, means how the cloud connectivity came into the picture, what is the purpose of connectivity, why it's necessary to have that cloud connectivity, whether it is a what purpose it is serving. Second, we'll just understand the basic AWS native services which is used for the connectivity purpose, which is a direct connect. There are a number of multiple connectivity services, but why we are today focusing on a direct connect, we'll just understand it later on. Then Rutuja will deep dive into the direct connect kind of a services, means why the purpose of the direct connect is has been introduced, why it is necessary to have that direct connect services. And last two are the kind of a best practices what we need to follow while setting up this. What are the challenges which can occur where we need to have this, and what are the benefits basically what we can leverage from this AWS services. And lastly, when we'll have one use cases which has been served, so we can just relate it to your use cases. Otherwise, you can we can have that directly connect with you also. You can just drop us a mail. So I hope that use cases will just align to your use case. Otherwise, we can have the any customizable use case aligned to it. So let's move forward. Now, just I need to have this connection kind of a, you have to just also think, let's understand what is the cloud connectivity, means why has been come into the picture. As the definitions expresses, key cloud connectivity refers to the connection between the on-premises infrastructure and cloud service providers. So basically, on-premises is the kind of a traditional data centers where all your servers are set up kind of thing, and there the connections means the whatever the servers related to users that needs to be connected to cloud services also, because nowadays we have been leveraging kind of a hybrid kind of a infrastructure, right? So there needs to be some connectivity, and that connectivity needs to be secure as well as the having a good kind of a latency. So where the cloud connectivity comes into the picture, this services, the direct connect. Now it can be refers to such as office network also, or any cloud service providers, whether it is AWS, whether it is a GCP, Azure. So this connections facilitates the seamless transfer of data, whether it is application hosting or whether it is a kind of a service consumption. So basically, the cloud connectivity needs to have in a properly aligned with this kind of a infrastructure using the native services of AWS. Now let's understand what are the types of cloud connectivity. I really want you, or means any one of you, means just to think over it, and you can just have it on your kind of a mind, kind of a readable. Key, what are the types of this cloud connectivity? Just a guesses. So you can have what are the types of connectivity. So I'm just letting. So these are the types of cloud connectivity. So public internet, virtual private network, and dedicated connections. Now these are the types of connectivity. We'll just understand one by one. Now coming to the public internet, is the simple kind of a basic terms, is the most common and straightforward way to connect to your cloud services, right? While this is a method is also accessible and cost effective because it is open for all kind of thing. It's an open public network, right? So it often suffers from a high latency, variable performance, or any potential security risk due to public in nature. Because publicly accessible means you're it's a kind of a little bit vulnerable kind of a say, or you can say it is open for all. So anyone can access it, that particular server, or anyone can have that accessibility to that publicly facing kind of thing. So there it's a kind of a cloud connective only. So it's not necessary to have your everything in a kind of a public facing kind of thing, but there are kind of a services, or there are some kind of a, we need to have some web facing kind of a web facing application. So we need to have that in a public facing only. And coming to the second one, virtual private network, everyone knows it. It's a more securely connections where you can have over the public internet by encrypting kind of a multiple services as well as the data. So this method improves the security, but may be still subject to the internet-based latency and performance issues, because everyone cannot have that same kind of a connectivity while connecting through VPN, because anyone can face the kind of a internet issue, anyone can face the some any whitelisting kind of issues also. So these are the kind of a dicey part also for the VPN. But yes, there are kind of a multiple third-party VPNs also we can leverage from AWS, as well as there is a kind of a customized solution where we can have a jump server in place, and you can have the access to jump server, and you can take access to the production server. It's kind of a referring to the Bastion host, or you can say the VPN also. So there are multiple kind of a free and open VPNs where we can have it configured to your infrastructure and have that connectivity established for the users. So this is the way. And now comes the dedicated connections. Now dedicated connection offers a private high bandwidth connection between the on-premise infrastructure and cloud providers, the AWS, any kind of a cloud providers. Okay. So these connections bypass the public internet, providing the enhanced performance, low latency, and increased security. So on top of this too, the dedicated connection is a main, I can say, where you can have your connectivity between your cloud services as well as the on-premises seamlessly and using this. So dedicated connections is that AWS native service is the direct connect where you can have that completely configured it, and you can have that kind of a privately share your users to be have connectivity between the cloud and the on-premises data set or on-premises infrastructure. Okay. So now cloud connectivity is done. You have understood the connectivity types also. So let's move forward to the business connectivity and reliability. Now, why this? I have introduced this slide because just to have understandable, because why it is your organization needs to have this in kind of a picture, because what are the key benefits of having this kind of a dedicated connection. So basically the business connectivity is the kind of a maintaining the whatever functional or maintaining the availability of an infrastructure, whether it is a kind of any kind of a disaster happens. Okay, so how it can be happen, because there are kind of a multiple hybrid kind of a structures where you need to have that connectivity established whether any disaster happens. So in that case, we need to have some kind of a privately link, or we need to have some private secure connection through which our business doesn't affect, right? So ensuring that we need to have this business connectivity. Now coming to the dedicated connections points, so these are some kind of key points I have highlighted where we need to have it. Basically the high availability, because your infrastructure needs to be on a high available, because let's say if any disaster happens in future, so your infrastructure needs to be scalable as well as highly available in that particular region or in a particular kind of a infra level. So that needs to be complied from that point of view. Coming to the disaster recovery, yes, you need to have some disaster strategies that needs to be aligned in your cloud infra as well as from the on-prem data center as well as, because to avoid this kind of a breakdown or any kind of a disruption between your connections or between your users, let's say. So that is the main one thing you need to align properly. Now reliable cloud connectivity, you can let's say, for example, you can say how your cloud has been more reliable. You can have that structure completely reliable on the cloud as well as from the on-premises. So that needs to be connectivity needs to be properly aligned. Using direct connect, you can definitely use that thing. So that's the one part where you can have that reliability in picture. And coming to the whatever the bandwidth or whatever the this thing, so it's a critical for maintaining the continuous operation, right? Because that reliability you need to have, it's basically during the unexpected outage or any kind of a disaster recovery. So where direct connect came into the picture, so direct connect provides a more stable and consistent network experience compared to the another types of connectivity. Okay. And just to have the technical details for it, so we need to have that dedicated bandwidth where we get a guaranteed bandwidth for data transfer. Means you don't need to rely on kind of a particular public internet for it. You can have your dedicated kind of a bandwidth set for the data transferring from on-prem to cloud, cloud to on-prem, where you can have your performance measure also. And also for the latency purpose, you can have that latency check and compared to the internet connection as well as. Okay. Now coming to the reducing dependency on public internet, yes, we don't need to rely on the public internet for the cloud connectivity. So as to have, they have introduced the AWS Direct Connect, where we can have that dependency reduced for the public internet and enhance our reliability and security of the connection. So basically, this is to ensure that whatever the mission critical applications are there, or any kind of a web application is there, where it is a kind of a critical data is there. So this service remains accessible during the internet disruption also, because if there is a no kind of an internet available, so this connectivity is there, the direct connect connectivity between the on-prem to cloud. So this is the thing. So because we can have many kind of a glitch, right? There needs to be a public kind of internet is not available, any vulnerabilities is there, any DDoS attacks are there, or any kind of unpredictable performance there. So this private connectivity would give us a secure, dedicated, consistent, and connectivity pathways. So you can just relate it to on a later slide. There will be a kind of a diagram where you will get a kind of a visualization how the connectivity is there. So slowly we'll move on to that particular slides. So just to now understand about the direct connect service. So what is direct connect? So basically the direct connect is a cloud solution that makes easy to have a dedicated connections between your on-prem to AWS and vice versa. So basically this service is for the providing the kind of an internet connectivity between your two connections, where now you can see in the diagram where you can see the AWS region and on-prem data center, and a direct connect would act as a mediator where we need to have that connection set with your network service provider. Means we need to have that kind of a connections with your internet service provider where we need to have some bandwidth set with them, and we need to have this direct connection location established properly so that you can have that bypass and you can have that connectivity from your one AWS region to the another data center kind of thing. So the primary purpose is to improve the performance and reduce the network cost associated with the data transfer between your data center as well as the wherever the co-location environment of the AWS is there. So basically, by embedding this direct connect service would give you the more enhancing kind of a connectivity between these two kind of a components where you can have it. Now there are kind of three components in the direct connect we need to understand. Basically, the concept you can say or the functionality of the direct connect. First one is the dedicated connection. So a dedicated connection, as I mentioned previously, it's a kind of a physical connections between your network and one of the direct AWS direct connect locations, where this is kind of a configured for the connectivity purpose. Basically, this is the same like whatever the internet connectivity we are having at a home, right? The internet ISP provider comes to us and he gives a kind of a connectivity through the kind of a optic fiber cable. So basically same we need to have this setup done for the direct connect as well as. So basically the high speed fiber optic connection has been set up through for the direct connections, and it gets the connection established. Okay. Now, second is a virtual interface, which we can call it. Basically, it's a logical connection that allows you to access from a different AWS services, because we don't need to have only the particular region to be have connected. So, what are the compatible services from the AWS where you need to have? So, these are the kind of you can say in which the interfaces are the two types, the public and private. So, private is a kind of a connects directly to your AWS VPC, where you having a customizable VPC or any kind of a default VPC, which is allowing you to access resources like EC2 instances or S3 within your private network. So this can be done through private virtual interfaces. And public is to no need to understand. It's a kind of a provides accessible to public services like S3, DynamoDB, or the public IP addresses with basically elastic IP address. Means what are the public means whichever are the public facing kind of a services where we need to have that public facing kind of thing. So that can be also done through public virtual interfaces. So these are the both sub you can say the interfaces in the virtual interfaces that has to be followed. And coming to the third, direct connect gateway. So it's basically allows you to connect multiple VPCs from your AWS regions to your direct connection using any kind of a single WIF or private WIF also, because we need to have a kind of a multi kind of a environment, right? You need, let's say there must be a non-production environment and production environment. So you have created different VPC for them just to have a segregated infra. As per the best practices, we do recommend to have that in kind of a segregated way. So for that connectivity, you can go through this component, direct connect gateway, which will allow you to connect multiple VPC and all that stuff. For the privately connectivity, also there are multiple kind of option available for the peering. VPC peering is there, transit gateway is there, but this would be a kind of a component where you need to have the multiple VPC connect for the AWS to on-prem. Moving forwards, so these are the kind of key benefits of the AWS Direct Connects, which definitely reduce the bandwidth cost. Now, why it reduce the bandwidth cost? Because you will be having a dedicated connection, right? So you can have that accessible in a kind of a fraction of seconds. You can have that latency also achieved. So definitely the data transfer cost, whatever the bandwidth is going from a public internet versus the private internet. So it will be a kind of a limited, and you can have that let's say the hands-on, or you can have that power to measure and handle it, means how much bandwidth you need to pass, how much are the users you need to connect with this direct connect. So that control would be there in your hand, so it will definitely reduce your bandwidth cost. Second is the consistent network performance. You will have achieved your whatever the network. Let's say you need to have this kind of a data. Let's say there is a kind of a multiple TBs kind of a data. You need to get transfer it kind of a day or a 2 day kind of thing. So where you can have this in a picture, direct connect, and you can have that transfer get it transfer, and you can achieve your network performance as well as. Third one is the service compatibility. As I mentioned previously, we would having the connectivity from the private interfaces as well as the public facing service also. So which are the EC2 resources, S3 bucket, or any DynamoDB, or any kind of a databases we need to have. So this is having a compatibility with kind of a services also. So whatever related to data and whatever related to data transfer services are there. So Direct Connect is fully fledgedly compatible with those services. Fourth one is the private connectivity to the AWS VPC. As I mentioned previously, the dedicated connection would give this functionality of the private connectivity. We can say you can just skip the public kind of internet connectivity, and you can go through this direct connect and have that private connectivity established. Okay. Now coming to the elastic kind of thing, the it's having kind of a very kind of a elasticity kind of a functionality where the you can have it configured in a AWS multiple VPC, as well as you can have in a kind of a single VPC also. So this kind of elasticity is there with this AWS Direct Connect service. I will just hand over it to the Rutuja. She will just guide you on this networking and all that stuff related to this part. So Rutuja, please take it on.
Thank you so much, Sanket. Hi, all. Good morning. So, as you all know, Sanket has explained an overall gist about the AWS Direct Connect service. I hope that's very understandable. Now, let us dive into the actual connectivity that works around this service. So, firstly, basically, as you can see in the diagram, the main components that lie under the AWS Direct Connect setup is firstly the data center that comes into picture, for which you require the physical connection. Later, you have one router, which will be provided to you by your DX provider, the Direct Connect provider that you have in picture. And there will also be another router dedicatedly for the Direct Connect service, which will carry on the connectivity to your AWS environment. So let us deep dive into this. So firstly, the data center will have created a physical connection to the router that is provided to it by the DX provider, AWS DX provider. So this connection is a physical connection, and this connection is majorly to be managed by the customer or the internet provider that they have at their end. So all the connections, all the setup has to be done by the customer and or the ISP provider that they have, and this will be managed by them itself. Later, when the connection gets into the direct connect location that we have in the AWS environment, there is a router that comes into picture, which is dedicatedly created and put into the direct connection by the ISP, the DX provider that you have. So this router is basically, you can say it's the customer router itself. So it is, there are two different routers, right? So this is solely managed by the customer. I mean, at the customer's end, and it is also called as the customer router. And next, alongside, besides it itself, you have the direct connect router that is provided by the AWS itself. So how the connectivity here works, there is a cross connect that happens in between. There is a meet room, you can say, where the connectivity meets over here. So the router, the customer router, as well as the direct connect router meet in this specific room, and there's a cross connection that happens, which creates a new connectivity through which you can connect to your AWS environment that is working aside. Okay, so this connectivity that happens over here is basically happening inside a direct connect location. So just to let you know, we have 31 AWS regions that are active, out of which we have 115 direct connect locations active at the moment. Okay, so out of these, one of the direct connect locations can be utilized by you, wherein this connection can be happened. So once the cross connect is created, and there's a strong cross connect between the two routers, the direct connect router takes this forward to the AWS backbone network, wherein there are multiple networks that we can discuss later, that we'll be discussing later. So in the AWS backbone network that works around, there are multiple networks that are created through which you will be connecting to your to the multiple AWS resources that are working in your AWS account or AWS environment. So just to understand the management of these networks, the first physical connection that comes into picture from the data center to the customer router is solely managed by the customer, as I said. The next physical connection that enters into the direct connect location. So this connection is solely managed by the DX provider that you have. And the cross connect is also managed by the DX provider. So you will get all the information from the DX provider, like how you will be having the connection made between all of these components. And next, from the direct connect router to your AWS environment, this connection is managed by AWS itself. So you don't need to hustle behind the maintenance and how will you have the connection made. This will be completely managed by AWS and you don't need to worry about this. I hope all the components are clear and you've got an idea of how the connectivity actually works and under this setup. So moving on, next we have the different components that we have in the direct connect. So firstly, there are two connections, basically there are connections in direct connect wherein you have two different connections that the AWS provides. So firstly, it's the dedicated connection, and second we have the hosted connections. So let's understand these two. So the dedicated connection, as the name suggests, is completely dedicated to the customer. You have a physical Ethernet connection associated with a single customer, and the customers here can request a dedicated connection through the AWS Direct Connect console there and there itself using the CLI or an API. So majorly the characteristics that follow with the dedicated connections, it is available for 1 gigabytes to 100 gigabytes, the capacity for this connection. And it completely offers you a private dedicated link to AWS, wherein the network bandwidth and the connectivity will completely be dedicated to that specific single customer itself, and no one can barge into or come in between this connection. So it will be completely solely for that specific customer only. And this majorly requires the customers to work with the direct connect partner that they are associated with to co-locate the AWS at a specific direct connect location. So majorly we recommend having the direct connect location nearby to the data center that you have. So for example, if you have a data center in North America and there's a direct connection location nearby, if there's a direct connection, there must be a direct connection location nearby it. So that's appropriate to choose a nearby direct connect location through which you will have the connectivity easily, and the direct connect location will have the connectivity taken forward to your AWS environment, where maybe it might be lying in India. So you'll have the connectivity done. But it is recommended to use the nearest direct connect location to your data center. And another uh, another point you can consider that should be kept in mind, that you cannot change the port speed after you create the connection request. So to change, so if you want to change the port speed, so like for example, let it 10 Gbps, moving to 50 Gbps, you'll have to create another new connection, because that specific connection is built on the purpose of the port speed that you have selected priorly. So to enhance it or maybe to have it increased, you'll have to create another connection all around itself. Okay, so next we have the hosted connections. So even in hosted connections, we have a physical Ethernet connection that an AWS direct connect partner will provision on behalf of the customer. And the customer has to request for a hosted connection by contacting the partner. And this actually, the difference over here is that the hosted connection is already a connection that is in place. So you get a space in that connection. You don't have a dedicated connection over here. So the port speed that you choose you'll have it allocated in the existing connection itself. So it will not dedicatedly function for you, but you'll have a you'll have a space allotted in that same connection itself. And the available capacities that we have in this are ranging from 50 Mbps to 10 Gbps only. So the hosted connection is majorly utilized for like low port speed or low bandwidth requirements. And as I said, it is a shared connection model where the partner provides the physical connection and multiple customers can share the bandwidth itself. So this is like an optimal solution and low on cost too, because you are optimizing the network bandwidth by having it grouped between multiple customers, as well as you don't have to pay for a dedicated connection and have it created completely for your use case. And this is also very easy to set up and more flexible in terms of the bandwidth options. Okay, so moving on, this is the like an overview versus diagram that we can understand. Just to go through this, the speed that I just mentioned earlier, the speed that dedicated connection supports is more than 1000 Gbps, like up till 1000 Gbps. But into hosted connections, as I said, it starts from Mbps and stops at 10 Gbps itself. The limit is 10 Gbps. So majorly it's used for Mbps network bandwidth connections. And the direct connect partner designation required for the dedicated connection is the connect directly to the AWS or through your true IDC. But for the hosted connections, you have to connect through your true IDC itself. The cross connect fee for both is included in the implementation fee by the AWS Direct Connect partner that you have connected with. And the port R charge also is billed to the AWS account. There are price variations for the specific port speed that you choose, and it will be easily available to you on the pricing page of AWS. Also, as I said, there has to be data transfer out this commercials involved in this, as there will be a lot of data transfer happening between these connections. So these pricing details will also be available to you at the AWS pricing page. And the virtual interfaces. So there are limitations for hosted connections wherein you can have only one WIF per one virtual interface per hosted connection. Customer may obtain multiple hosted connections wherein you can have multiple WIFs, but for per hosted connection you can have only one WIF. Whereas for the dedicated connections, you can have 50 private as well as public WIFs per dedicated connections. So as I said, that's a dedicated connection to you, so you can have multiple WIFs involved in this. Moving on, we have the virtual interfaces. We have the use cases. Okay, so the use cases, basically, as I said, I think you might have got the idea where should a dedicated connection be used. So majorly the use cases that come under dedicated connections are large enterprises and performance critical environments. So if you have a large enterprise wherein the data center is huge and you require a lot of amount of network bandwidth, and you need a dedicated connection wherein the security will also be in place, because workloads where you have performance critical environments wherein you require the maximum amount of availability and you cannot expect a crash down. So for such workloads, we recommend dedicated connections to be implemented thoroughly. And for workloads where you have a small to medium sized businesses, and you, or maybe you are into the initial testing and development phase, and the need of flexible bandwidths are very varying. So you can manage in comparatively less bandwidths, and there is no performance critical or production workloads that you are dealing with. You can opt the hosted connections also, which is a much optimal and cost efficient solution. So moving on, we have, can you just change the slide, Sanket? Yeah, thanks. So moving on, we have the virtual interfaces. That is also an optimal part of direct connect. So majorly without these, your direct connect will not function. This is a very important part, because without this you cannot connect to the AWS itself. This has to be in your setup. So just to understand, virtual interfaces are a logical connections that enable you to access AWS resources over an direct connection setup. The purpose of this interface, it is used to connect, as I said, the different AWS services, providing a very tailored connectivity option for the various business needs that you have. So the options, we'll just discuss it right now. There are options like you have the private virtual interface, you have public virtual interface, as well as you have transit virtual interface. So first let us look into the private virtual interface. So over here, it connects directly to your Amazon Virtual Private Cloud, that is a VPC. So basically, the name as it says, private virtual interface is basically used for connecting to your services that are privately, like in a private environment, or which don't have a public facing IP, or maybe a public facing interface. They are not publicly available. They are in a private space inside your AWS environment. So basically, private WIF is used in these use cases. So this establishes a private connectivity between your on-prem network and your VPC, majorly your VPC and the services that come under your VPC, like your server and your database. So majorly this WIF is used to get connection between your servers and databases that reside in your VPC. And the traffic is obviously not exposed to internet, which enhances the security a lot more. And the use cases, for example, you can extend the on-premises data centers into the cloud. So if you have running applications that require a secure private connectivity to your VPC, you can have this WIF installed for that specific use case. Moving on, for the public private interface, as the name suggests, over here also it's an interface, but basically used for the public services that you have in your AWS environment. So it provides the access to all the public services using public IP addresses. So public services like the AWS S3, best example, the elastic IPs that are in your AWS environment. So this WIF actually uses public IPs at their end to connect to these services that you have. It allows direct access to the public endpoints. You have an S3 endpoint, it will get access to it publicly from your on-premises network. And the traffic uses AWS backbone network, reducing the latency compared to the internet access. So there is like not a major security glitch over here, because it comes under the AWS backbone network itself, but the public IPs that are actually being used are publicly available and can be you know can be maybe have a error or something. To just enhance the security in this perspective, we also recommend to have a firewall in place. So you can have a firewall at the AWS end, wherein you can be safeguarded if there is another user that is using the same public IP or some other error that happens in this setup. So you can have a firewall also set up, which will actually enhance the security in this setup too. So majorly it will not stay public, stay that unsecure also. Moving on, for the transit virtual interface, so this actually is used to connect to the AWS transit gateway inside your AWS environment, facilitating the complex network architectures that you have. So now, for example, if you have multiple VPCs, like currently in the market, it's where the control tower setup is going very famous. So if you have, under this setup, you have multiple VPCs into your environment, and you need to connect to all of those through the direct connection. You can have the transit gateway in picture, wherein you will have all your VPCs connected under your transit gateway, to which this transit virtual interface will be connected, and you'll have dedicated connection to your transit gateway as well, and wherein you can have the multiple VPCs connected. So this enables a centralized connectivity, obviously, across multiple VPCs and the on-prem network that you have. And this actually also simplifies the network design and reduces the need for complex peering relationships. So you will not need to have VPC peering between every VPCs and then have a connectivity. So you can have a dedicated centralized transit gateway working for it, wherein you can have the direct connection happening. So majorly this WIF is actually used for large scale enterprises managing multiple VPCs and regions needing an efficient interconnectivity between them. So this is majorly used over there. And businesses like looking to streamline their network management with a single centralized transit point. These such use cases can also use this type of WIF. And also there's another component that can be used over here. So you can also have, in place of transit gateway, you can also have another component that is direct connect gateway. So this can also come into picture since transit gateway itself has a different costing for it. The direct connect gateway does not have any cost, so it is a no cost service that direct connect allows you to use to be connected to multiple VPCs that you have in your AWS environment. So even this can be utilized, which will allow you, in the same case, it will also allow you to connect to the multiple VPCs that you have in your environment. Okay, so another point, there's another point. So the VLAN tagging that we have in picture. So actually this specific setup is used to have the respective public and private WIFs that you have in your setup is routed to the respective services. So you can over here, you can actually tag your virtual interfaces, because obviously without tagging you might get confused. Now if you have two to three or multiple public WIFs, multiple private WIFs, so there'll be a confusion which WIF is being used for which service or which VPC basically. So to uh, normalize this, to make it more easier for the customer as well as the engineer that's working behind, you can have VLAN tagging for your specific WIF, which will tag the specific virtual interface to be connected to the specific service that it has been implemented and set up for. So this is also a new feature that the Direct Connect offers you, which will make your work more easier. So moving on, next we have, yeah. So yeah, I hope all the components are very clear and you've understood how the Direct Connect actually works, and how the components are actually working, and what are the variations that Direct Connect allows you with the components that it offers, and also the ease of use that it allows you with the multiple features that it has. So the best practices that you should actually implement to have a successful implementation adhering the best practices that AWS suggests you for your Direct Connect setup. So you can use the AWS Direct Connect for having a high resilience architecture. So the high resilient and fault tolerant network connections are a key, obviously, to a very well architected system. And AWS definitely recommends connecting from multiple data centers for physical location redundancy. So if you have multiple data centers into your environment, you can have the redundancy achieved by connecting all the data centers using the Direct Connect. And when designing remote connections, you can consider using the redundant hardware and telecommunications providers. Also, you can achieve network redundancy by implementing the redundant connections to ensure that you have high availability, and you also minimize the risk of downtime. Coming to the security measures, so we highly recommend you to implement appropriate security controls such as encryption, access controls, and monitoring to protect the data that is transmitted over your direct connect connections. So the access controls, obviously, please have the accesses, least privilege accesses principle working at your end, and also have encryption in place for the connection that is being happening between your on-prem to the AWS environment. Also, traffic engineering is a point which will help you optimize the network traffic by using routing policies and traffic engineering techniques to direct the traffic efficiently between your on-prem infrastructure and the AWS cloud. So this is where like you have to select a specific port wherein you will have a feasible connection so that you don't need to have it changed every now and then. Discuss and decide a specific port which will support your setup and have an efficient and working connection suitable for your use case. Also, the bandwidth planning, as I just suggested, estimate the required bandwidth based on the expected workloads and data transfer requirements. So have it completely analyzed as per your requirement and have a estimate of the bandwidth that will be carried on for a longer time. And the network monitoring and troubleshooting. So implement a high network monitoring and logging solutions to proactively monitor the AWS Direct Connect connections. So you can like troubleshoot in case of any issue that may arise. There is no issue, majorly no issues come under this because the connection is actually made as per the use cases, but have this monitoring and logging enabled so that in case of any issues you have the whole data on which you can analyze and troubleshoot easily. So yes, I hope the slides are very much explainable to you as I had them deep dive about the service. Moving on, we have a use case that will be completely explained to you by Sanket. So thank you, and over to you, Sanket.
Yeah. Thank you, Rituja, for that deep dive session on the direct connect. I hope everyone has got the connectivity of the direct connect easily, and you have got everything about the components, whatever the Rituja explained about the wave and whatever the private, public, and all that stuff. Also, the diagram was quite self-explanatory as well as it was a quite deep session. So now moving to the use cases, we'll just have just added one example just to relate to your use cases. But now direct connect is the kind of a minor services where you need to have embedded in your infrastructure, because it is not a kind of a it's kind of a not a whole kind of a services where you need to rely on that particular service. It's kind of a small component where you need to embed into your AWS account, and you can use that service. You can have that multiple use cases, and whatever your business outcomes are, that can be achieved. Now Blue is one of the kind of a Singaporean company where they have been having kind of a logistic chains to manage the e-coms kind of thing, same as the Amazon, all that stuff. So they have been leveraging multiple kind of AWS services, in which they have been leveraging the AWS Direct Connect for the transferring all that stuff. So let's understand now. This is a kind of a managing for the entire logistic value chain for e-commerce customer. So they have been just to have that brief kind of a history for the Blue company. So they have been automating their warehouses and whatever the fulfillment of delivery. So currently they have been are having a 120 Blue port kind of a parcel lockers across the countries, just to have that parcel delivery end to end kind of a end-to-end kind of a delivered by every country to country, state to state, and all that stuff. And they are also managing for the same day kind of thing, whatever the Amazon suggest. So they are the same kind of thing. And just to understand, their motive is to have that the parcel awaits for you. They are having kind of a tagline: "Ki you don't need to wait for your kind of where my parcel has been stuck and whatever the history." So they have been also introduced with their kind of a delivery process can be a hassle-free kind of thing. So particularly the items were kind of in a signature to confirm the receipts, the customer may become captive. So it is a kind of a e-com logistic where the tagline has been founded. It has been founded in a kind of a 2015 kind of thing. The foundation, it has been founded in 2015 in the domestic market of Singapore only, and which manages the logistic value of change related to e-com retailers. It also has the mobile applications for individual consumers to whatever they get the information about the parcel across the multiple kind of locations. And also it has been it's obviously the we know kind of Indian market, let's say any kind of a logistic, they are having kind of a particular rate fix for that particular this kind of a kgs of parcel. So same as they have been also funny. So their existing infra was on a kind of a on-prem data center where they have been doing kind of a multiple automation related to some AI kind of thing, automation, just to have that whatever the parser related to human free kind of a thing. So they have been automating and leveraging multiple kind of on-prem data centers where they have it. But their CTO once come up with whatever the connectivity is there with the consumer, so there was kind of a glitch in that. So there was many kind of a securely connection were not happening. They were facing kind of a scalability issues and any performance issue at the on-prem side. So they wanted to have their engineers to be mostly focused on the development of their applications and whatever the web portal. So they realized that whatever we need to have the automation and whatever we need to have the benefits of securely, so why can't they go with the kind of multiple kind of stuff, multiple kind of a hybrid structure or any kind of a particular cloud kind of thing. So they move on to the kind of a cloud infrastructure where their CTO, the Prashant Dadlani, is there, the founder, and he's a chief executive officer for the Blue. So he means got the idea about the AWS cloud, where AWS offers a range of solution that gives you the security, the scalability. So that he thought he need to have that support and expansion for that particular Blue kind of applications. So considering this kind of thing, he has been using the AWS cloud for the leveraging this 120 kind of his lockers kind of thing, just to have that availability and just to have the time saving and cost cutting also. So we have been introduced, the AWS has been introduced the databases for the database purpose, the RDS service, and for the scaling kind of a purposes, they have been leveraging kind of a EC2 and along with the auto scaling feature with that, which can be have the auto scaling enable with a different multiple AZ kind of thing. So which is a kind of a key to managing the, we can say, the volatile workloads and the characteristics of this logistic industry. So this was the main concern. Now they came into the picture, then they have to have the balance kind of accessibility between their consumer as well as this lockers kind of thing. So there needs to be have some security in the picture. So where they have been introduced with the some kind of a IoT applications. Okay, the IoT devices were set there. You need to have them. You don't need to wait for your parcel. There were some IoT devices set there. So now to have this connection between these IoT devices and the clients or whatever the consumers, so they were facing kind of any vulnerability. So whatever the data related to transfer means where my parcel has been reached or what is the data, how has been the, where we need to locate the parcel data. So where they have been using direct connect just to have that data transfer over a private connections, because in between there were many kind of a public facing kind of thing, as I mentioned previously also. By having publicly available, it would be a kind of a vulnerability for your infra as well as for your dedicated whatever you're delivering, what your applications or web portal to it. So they introduces the AWS direct connect where the blue port data means whatever it has been transferred over the private connections and they have been securely through the AWS environment, which has been enhancing the scalability and also the accessibility while maintaining the high level of security. So the Prashant Dadlani, the CEO of the Blue, so he has been definitely experiencing this direct connect very hugely, and they have been very much satisfied this kind of a solution which has AWS has offered. So this way the kind of a basically the setup has been done. So now I can say what are the benefits they have been achieved through this AWS services. Definitely the enhancement of the security by using the private connection through direct connect, because they have been using the direct connect for this private connectivity from them on-prem to the cloud and whatever the consumers they need to have, because they have been set up in a kind of a whole Singapore region also. So they had set up that. Also for the time consuming and the database, they have been leveraging the RDS service, and just to boost the productivity of their engineers, they have been using this direct connect and any kind of a managed services from the AWS. So they don't need to hustle to manage the server part, what is the CPU utilization, what are the storage kind of if it is getting if it is getting high and all that stuff. So they don't need to do, everything is aligned by the AWS services. And also the expansion of the businesses they have been increasing, and also for the communications with the near real-time data kind of thing, or whatever they need to have that updated key, okay, my parcel has been reached here for this location that needs to be get picked up. So that has been also communication has been happened properly with the secure way only. So just to simplify the communication with in-app messages, they have been leveraging them. So as to maintain that the speed of the Blue, the one day kind of thing, So they have been also maintaining on the top of it, and that was the key factor in that. And whatever related to automated messages they generated for their consumers via, let's say, any kind of a medium, social media platform, let's say WhatsApp. So that has been also been doing properly. So there is no need to for the customer to search kind of any particular website or scroll down to any kind of a tracker devices kind of things. They have been embedded into their application only. So which has made a huge difference for the blue organization as well as for the customer journey since migrating from on-prem to the AWS. So they have been also facing the zero downtime also. So by leveraging this cloud native approach, they have been leveraging kind of a modernization stuff as well as. But let's not consider this direct connect as a single point or single service we need to leverage, because it can be integrated with kind of a multiple services, and it's a kind of a small use cases where you need to have this, because it is a kind of having a limited kind of a functionality in that for the connectivity purpose. But you need to have this kind of a multiple services, and you need to click connect those dots over this multiple services and use the direct connect services. And just to understand the multiple kind of connectivity of the direct connect, you can have the direct connected service implemented at your infra level. But just to give you heads up, your use case needs to have kind of that connectivity, means the use case needs to be aligned properly, because we cannot go and directly configure direct connect and okay, you can have that privately connection, because your use case needs to be aligned according to it. Because as Rutuja also mentioned, key, you need to have it to large enterprises kind of thing, or any kind of a particular use case where you need to have that private and secure connections. So where direct connect will come into the picture, because for the connectivity purpose we can have the VPN also, we can have the jump server also, but just to have this kind of a dedicated connections where you can have that securely and communication done through the whatever the data transfer you're doing. So where you can have that direct connect, because considering from a commercial part as well as considering from a use case part, from a solution architect point of view, I would also suggest you to have that use case properly aligned, as you have seen this blue port kind of a use case. So you can just have that dots linked to this particular services, and you can have this service leverage. So this was the overall kind of a use case and whatever we wanted to deliver to you for the regarding to the direct connect. I hope it has given you the kind of a good kind of information where we have come up with your multiple features, the benefits of it, and whatever the use cases we have been allowed. So you can have that links connected through your particular use cases. And I hope that session was quite informative for you. And if you have any suggestions or if you have any kind of a questions, you can just put them into the chat box, or if you wanted to have any kind of unmute, we can have that particular candidate unmuted also. And let us know your question answer. If you wanted any kind of wanted any particular topic to be have held on, because we do have this meetups kind of thing, you can just suggest that topics also, so we can take up that topics for the next webinar session, and we can have the showcase our expertise in that stuff. Over to you, Suvarna.
Thank you, Sanket and Rutuja, for such an informative session. We are open for question and answers. So if anyone is having any questions, you can type in or just raise your hand and I will unmute you. Let me just check the question section, Sanket. Sanket, Rutuja, there are no questions, so I guess we can conclude the session. Thank you all for joining us today, and thank you, Sanket and Rutuja, once again. Have a wonderful day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks, ma'am.